I think, okay, we can start. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's second webinar. This time we are focusing on the Microsoft tools. So today's agenda is to go over our tech stack using the Microsoft AI ecosystem, and we will give you an overview of the tools that you will have available to design and develop your solutions or prototypes. This is the fourth session of our ideation week. And in case you haven't been able to attend the previous one, you can find all the recordings here in our shared folder. And this session is also being recorded and will be available to all of you in the same folder. So it's my pleasure to introduce you today to our mentor, Deepa Shinde, a senior solution architect from Microsoft UK's innovation team. She has a rich background spanning 19 years in the IT sector and 5 years in education. She's worked at Microsoft for the past 2.5 years, where she has led several initiatives as an apps and AI architect in the pharma domain, and previously managed a team focused on low-code, no-code solutions. Her expertise lies in fusion development, integrating pro-code and low-code technologies to address customer needs effectively. So as you can see, she has a very relevant background for this hackathon. And before joining Microsoft, Deepa was instrumental in overseeing applications, business intelligence, and information management at Turo Oil. Finally, alongside her professional endeavors, Deepa has also dedicated 5 years to teaching science and maths, reflecting her passion for education and quantum physics. So we are proud to say that Deepa will be joining us on Saturday online as a technical mentor for the Microsoft tools. And here you will have the chance to book some time slots from 15 to 30 minutes with her, where you can ask questions around the Microsoft tools. We will also have 2 more mentors, experts in the Microsoft tech stack, that will be available in person in San Francisco Science Park, but also online during the whole weekend. So in today's webinar, Deepa will share her insights on leveraging the Microsoft GenAI ecosystem for accelerating innovation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type those in the chat. We will answer them after the presentation. And with this, I hand over to you, Deepa.
Thank you so much, Sandra. You did my work of introduction, so I don't have to introduce myself. But thank you so much, and thanks for this opportunity. It's for a very good cause, and I'm really excited to be here with everyone. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen quickly with you all. Before you all joined, we were trying sharing, and for some reason, one of my screen wasn't working. So hopefully this will work now. Is that visible?
Yes, it works.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then what I would also do is I'll kind of turn off my camera so you all can just focus on the presentation. Right. So what we are going to do today is just 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Right. So let me go to the next slide. So what we are going to do quickly in the rest of the time today is look at a quick glance of Microsoft AI ecosystem. So like quickly brush through some of the technologies we have and what you would have access to on the day, basically. Over the weekend, 2 days. We will talk about one specific tool which we think is very apt. As a V team here, we have looked at services, and for us, we think Copilot Studio would be a very good tool for you to build some of your conversational applications during the weekend. And then we'll go through some of the main features of Copilot Studio. And again, I'll take you through one Copilot Studio, a very easy one that's been built. We don't want to, kind of take you through lots of things today and then make it really confusing. So a very simple one that has already been built. I'll take you through that, and then I'll give you a quick heads up about the setup on both Copilot Studio and Azure subscription for the services, and then I'll also mention about the documentation, which has been kindly put together by Sandra and Martin, and they will be sharing that later in this week, basically. Right, so that's the agenda. We'll just quickly go through some of these services, especially in the AI space that we have. In terms of questions, like Sandra said previously, just keep them going in the chat. We will pick these questions up afterwards and respond back to you. What we would do is try and avoid breaking in between today because we want to finish what we are here to do, so that everybody gets the full idea of what they're going to do over the weekend, and potentially, what you need to be prepared for if you have time. So in terms of the portfolio of services that we have, and you'll have availability of some of this. So let me get my pointer here. So in terms of ecosystem that we have a core development platform for AI and machine learning. So you would see ML platform here, which is the machine learning platform. You would have some access to this on the day, but again, this is potentially after you create the Azure subscription, and we'll talk about that. And then you would have access to the cognitive services. Again, quite important. Apart from Azure OpenAI, you wouldn't have access to this because that's available only for certain types of subscriptions at this point in time. And unfortunately, over the weekend, you wouldn't have access to Azure OpenAI, but you would have access to all of the cognitive services, which includes vision, speech, language, decision making, but also applied AI services like cognitive search, which is more like an intelligent search. And then you would have access to document intelligence. Form recognizer is now called as document intelligence. Sorry, I missed on renaming that. And then there are a few other services as well. I'm not going to go through all of them because I really want to take you guys through Copilot Studio. But I think this stack is quite important because you would have access to something called as Power Apps, Power Automate, as well as Power Virtual Agents, which is now rebranded as Copilot Studio. And that's what we are here to talk about. I deliberately kept it as Power Virtual Agents because I wanted to make sure that, some of you might have come across it. And I wanted to make sure it is still called as that because it's been evolved as Microsoft Copilot Studio. So generative AI along with Power Virtual Agents and along with some of the other functionalities together, kind of, especially in the task-oriented space, together makes Copilot Studio. And we'll talk about that actually. Today's more about Copilot Studio. But this ecosystem will be available to you. Power Apps, as the name suggests, it's for low-code, no-code application building platform. And then Power Automate is a low-code, no-code workflow building environment, whereas Microsoft Copilot Studio is more for conversational AI building applications. And then we'll not talk about this bit yet because I don't think it's on the day you would have access to any of these solutions at the top. So again, like I said, there are these services that you would have access to, and some of these I mentioned here. So for example, vision, speech. I'm not going to go into details of this because the name itself kind of speaks for it. Language services, decision-making services, as well as OpenAI, but you wouldn't have access to Azure OpenAI service. Cognitive search is an intelligent search platform which will help you to point to certain databases and build intelligent search. Again, today we are not going to discuss cognitive search, but on the day when you guys are kind of design thinking about your application, post thinking about the business value of the solution that you're going to build, there would be folks like myself and like two others who Sandra mentioned would be able to help you to think about which services you can use to build your application and in that time span as well, isn't it? So we would be there to help you to build or more than building, to kind of design the applications, and you can kind of book time with us. This backend is more about the backend models that are available in Azure OpenAI, but as I said, for that day you wouldn't have access to this. Now going into conversational AI, I'm going to go through some of these slides very quickly because I really want to show you the Copilot Studio work on my setup, on my environment, basically. So conversational AI is becoming important. As you see, 30% of work activities using technology would be conversational soon, right? So I mean, it's even before 2026, based on the experience I'm having and the rest of the Microsoft is having with customers in your space, in your industry, but also beyond your industry. The space is moving very, very, very fast, basically. Right. So when we say, you all must have heard this phrase quite a lot, Copilot. And what is a Copilot? Copilot is nothing but a chatbot that is infused with generative AI, a chatbot that is contextual, a chatbot that is responsible, pays attention to responsible AI, a chatbot that kind of grounds multiple data sources together. That becomes Copilot. But one of the biggest advantage of a Copilot over chatbot is Copilot is task oriented. So it's no longer about asking questions. It is about asking questions, giving answers, and then taking an action on top of what user needs. So that's what Copilot is. So every time I'm going to say Copilot, or during your design thinking sessions as well, when you come up with a chatbot that needs to take more action, is more generative, AI driven, it's basically going to be Copilot. Now we have multiple co-pilots which are managed, available within Microsoft ecosystem. Again, I'm not going to drain you guys through that, but I want you to be aware of it, that there are co-pilots on M365, which some of you would have access previously, but there are multiple co-pilots that are available already, which are managed, and they work on top of M365 data. These are managed co-pilots in the sense you don't have to build anything. These co-pilots are there already on Office services, on Teams, on Outlook, in Loop, in OneNote, and they are there to support you to create content or understand content quicker. Okay. So one of the things I really wanted to mention Copilots is because you all must have heard about Copilots, and where does Microsoft Copilot Studio stands. It's quite important to understand the existing managed Copilots, right? What we suggest people is, generally, if it is something that the managed Copilot can actually offer you in terms of your requirement, there's no need for you to build your own Copilot, because you're already like bought into the existing Copilot and you can use that. But I think for the day on the hack, none of us have access to any of the managed Copilots, right? So it's all about thinking how you build. If at all you need conversational AI, then how do you build that? And that's where Copilot Studio comes into picture. Copilot Studio is basically a low-code offering in the space of conversational AI applications, basically, and it has helped to customize existing copilots, which is of no relevance to us for the weekend, but it is there for us to build new copilots, new conversational chat applications. So that's what I'm going to skip this video, because we have a few videos further ahead, and then we can look at those instead of this one. Yeah, okay. So just quick overview of Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is there for you to create your own copilots, build from scratch, build your own copilots. And it is basically something that helps you to glue a lot of different services together. And I think it's quite important for us to understand this for the weekend when we're going to build this together. Is you can bring in cognitive services that I mentioned previously, like your vision service, your speech service, your document scraping service, along with Copilot Studio, and give that to your conversational application and get answers out of conversational application. So we'll see one example that doesn't really integrate with the Copilot Studio, but it will give you a context of how you build copilots with Copilot Studio, basically. But then you can extend your Copilot by integrating with these ecosystems. For example, like I said, Azure Cognitive Services, there are multiple, those of you are aware of Power Platform, quite powerful, 1,000 connectors, right, to third-party systems already. And you can connect to these third-party systems quite easily from Copilot Studio using these connectors. But you can also bring in your APIs. If you have your custom API, then you can bring that in using something called as custom connector. So like big set of integration with loads of different services, including something that I mentioned previously, like Power Automate, right? It's a workflow building engine. So let's say you're building a Copilot that needs to send an email to somebody after something is done, right? you can take that action using Power Automate. It's a very quick, it's again low code, no code workflow building, action building engine. You can build that very, very quickly using Power Automate. Again, Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, all these have naturally inbuilt co-pilots, which can help you to build these applications quicker. So you can, in a very natural language, you can say to Power Automate, I want to build a flow or a workflow that does blah, blah, blah. That sends an email, and it will build the skeleton for you so that you just have to extend it further if needed to be, customize it further if needed to be. But otherwise, you can use natural language to help build these tools basically. So that's in a nutshell, at a very top level, what Copilot Studio is there to do. And as I said, Copilot Studio is all about taking actions as well. It's not just about discovery. It's not just about giving answers to the question. It's all about it's also about taking actions, and that's quite important for a Copilot. Now, as I said, right, where does Copilot Studio sit? Copilot Studio sits in between the existing Copilots for extension, and it kind of uses these blue boxes at the bottom to build the custom Copilots. I've already mentioned Power Platform connectors. We are not going to go into deep for any of these services actually that I mentioned here. But there is a documentation that is coming through, which will have information about how you kind of build end-to-end with Copilot Studio. And also it will have links, not the documentation, but the material that you would go to would have information about how you extend using some of these services at the bottom, especially Azure Cognitive services like vision, speech, document intelligence. So what it does is basically it uses all the ecosystem of these services together to build a Copilot, a conversational application. We spoke about connectors. Connectors is nothing but it's like a stub that helps you to interact with a third-party system, and not just third-party system, but let's say if you want to connect to Azure speech service, then there is a connector already available that helps you to connect to a speech service. You don't have to write everything from scratch. Likewise, I'm not going to explain some of these because I don't think they would be relevant. And if somebody has very specific need, then we can discuss it on the day. But I'm going to majorly, focus on this side. AI Builder is a low-code, no-code model building service, again, on Power Platform. And it is basically something that helps you to train the existing models. So, for example, if you have a documentation, or a document that comes through, I would say, let's say as a lab files, right, that you get from labs every week or every month, then if the structure of those files is pretty much, like similar to a certain extent, then you can actually train a model in a very low code way as a business person as well to build a model or a customized model, which can then scrape data from such documents going forward. So you kind of, train with 5 documents. It understands what that document has. It builds like a CDM, which is common data model after scraping all the information from those documents. And then every time a new document of that nature comes in or gets uploaded, it pulls data from it. This is for like easy discovery and easy collection of data. But that's one, right? You can do lots of other things with AI Builder, like you can build prompts. There's something called as prompt library with AI Builder, and you can build prompts which you can share with your colleagues as well with AI Builder. So again, quite a powerful tool. So what does Copilot Studio has? I'm not going to talk about this part because I don't think it is relevant for the day of the hack. What I'm going to focus on is this basically. So so Copilot Studio has generative AI features, which means it uses large language model in the backend, especially GPT 3.5 in the backend, to basically help you question over a website, let's say, that is a public website, or it could be a SharePoint site that has lots of documentation, organization-specific documentation that's in there. So you can actually point to these websites or SharePoint sites, and you don't have to do anything, basically. You just have to ask questions, and it will use those sites to get data back. So basically what it does rack pattern in the backend, retrieval augmentation generation pattern basically, which is one of the patterns to generate content basically using LLMs. It uses that in the backend. It's all black box for you. What you have to do is give a site or give multiple sites or give or point to a SharePoint site, and it does everything in the backend. All the RAG vectorization, everything is done in the backend, and that's it. You can just make your blog, your bot live or a Copilot live with that. So that's one aspect of generative AI that it supports, and there are multiple other things that it does as well. And we further down the line, I'm going to show you that. Plugins is nothing but it's more for taking actions. This is more for Q&A purposes, but this is more for action taking purposes basically. So you could have multiple API endpoints, you could have multiple workflows, you could have multiple generative AI conversational plugins as well that you could create in Copilot Studio. And then Copilot Studio has a feature called as dynamic chaining. It uses dynamic chaining functionality to pick up the right plugin based on the description that you have given. So let's imagine I'm an end user and I'm asking question which you haven't designed any sort of specific topics in. I'll tell you what topic is basically, but let's say you haven't, what you have done is you have just pointed to a website. You have done nothing else basically, no other specific customization you have done. And I'm just going to take example of AstraZeneca because the bot that I'm going to take you through is pointing to AstraZeneca website, basically public website. Let's say we are pointing to that, right? And nothing else we have done on the Copilot Studio. And if somebody asks questions about how do you partner with AstraZeneca, let's say, and if there's a specific process of partnering with AstraZeneca, which needs for you to fill up a form, let's say. So just by pointing to AstraZeneca site, what it would do is it will just tell you, this as a textual answer, it will tell you this is the link that you go to. Generally, this is blah blah blah. This is how you partner with AstraZeneca. But then if you want somebody to actually take an action of filling up a form, then you have to use something called as plugins that will help you to actually point a user to filling up a form, submitting that form, and that form being sent to somebody or stored somebody. So imagine like taking actions is all about plugins. But one step further, if you don't exactly, generally in conversational AI, we don't necessarily know what the user is going to ask, right? So then if you don't necessarily know what the user is going to ask, these plugins, a dynamic chaining functionality within Copilot Studio actually understands what every plugin does. And it actually executes the plugin based on the intent of the customer, so or end user. So if the unknown intent is thrown at a Copilot created using Copilot Studio and has dynamic chaining on with certain plugins that you have given it, it will on its own decide which plugin to use using the generative AI capability. So it's quite a powerful feature basically. Again, if somebody has to specifically use this feature, then there'll be more links in the documentation that will come to you, which will tell you, how to use it. But I think for the weekend, I think most of you would generally be in the generative AI space, and with plugins, you might extend it with workflows. But then getting into something like multi-agent architecture with GenAI is not something we would be doing either. And it's typical, getting too much into details. So if on the day somebody needs the help and definitely needs to use this feature, then we can take it one-to-one. I'm going to skip some of this because I think probably might be irrelevant for the day. But these are various different channels to which you can publish your bot. So you can publish your bot to Teams, but you can also publish your bot to a web channel, basically any site. Now, just quickly about Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is a front end, and it gives you a very nice conversational front end, but it is also an orchestrator because of the dynamic plugin. Again, I'm not going to go into details of this because some of you might be aware of this, some of you might not. So I don't want to spend time actually going through this entire stack, but just just remember that Copilot Studio is also for mixing and matching your data. You don't have to do it yourself. It does the orchestration, it does the RAG pattern on its own, and it gives you the front end, conversational front end. Basically, that's the only thing you would have to be aware of for the day. These are some of the other services that some of this you would have access to on the day. Some of this you might not have access to on the day. Like, for example, you have access to all of this. But again, we are not going to get into details of how to build logic apps or functions. You wouldn't have access to any of the models, as I said, but you would have access to cognitive search that will help you to if you want to build something more than Copilot Studio, if you need to build end-to-end custom Copilot, then that needs to be done in the code, and that needs to use all of some of these services or all of these services. Again, on the day, if there's a need for some of your use cases to specifically use code first approach as opposed to Copilot Studio approach, then we will take it case by case on that day. Now, I think I have explained the generative AI functionality right in the beginning. It's pointing to multiple SharePoint sites or pointing to internet sites, and it does RAG in the backend. It's a black box. You just have to start using the Copilot. Generative actions. Again, it's more based on plugins. It's for taking actions, writing workflows, integrating your APIs. It's basically to act. This is to answer, as I said, and to build. As I said, there's a Copilot within Copilot Studio that helps you to build some of these workflows and some of these topics properly. Now, what I'll do is let's just talk about topics. I'm going to skip some of this. It's fine. We don't need it for the day. Yeah, so what we will do is we will quickly go through this life cycle of, on the day, because you're going to create a Copilot. Some of this is very relevant for what you guys are going to do. So when you create Copilot, one of the things you might want to do is like chat over your knowledge, right? Chat over your documentation. You can either upload a document in Copilot Studio, or you can point to websites or point to internal sites, as I've said, or point to a blob endpoint, which has lots of documentation stored, right? So that is chatting over the data using generative AI. So it's kind of built in. You just point to the websites, point to your data, or point to your cognitive search index, and it brings all of that in to answer the questions. What I want to do is I want to talk about topics just so that I think some of you might be aware of topics. They are very specific, not to Copilot Studio, they're specific to conversational AI. So I think it's quite important to understand what topics are basically. So for that, what I'll do is I'll just skip the next part, which is chatting over the data, because I've spoken about it already. I'm just going to go directly skip some of this as well, slightly detailed. So yeah, so specific topics, right? So what is a topic? Now, conversational AI is all about topic engineering. Not just now, even previously, right? When anybody has to write a conversational application, it's all about how you design a topic. Topic is nothing but a kind of query or type of queries that user is going to ask. So for example, if I'm creating a chatbot that helps people get to their, I don't know, like UK tax, right? What is my UK tax? What will be my annual tax if my salary is XYZ, right? That is a topic. Okay, now that topic has to be engineered. If you see here, this is the process of topic engineering. You ask a question, the trigger, you can't see trigger point here, but we'll see it when I share my screen with my environment. But it's all about triggering with the phrases that user might ask, then asking a question to the user and building various conditions. That's typical, topic engineering and conversational tree, basically. Previously, one has to be expert in understanding the domain and also creating these topics in a tool like Power Virtual Agents. But today, because of the conversational AI backup that we have with Copilot Studio, you can just naturally say, please build a topic for me that takes input from the user as their annual salary and gives them back their tax tax bracket or their annual tax. So it will build a topic for you. It will build the entire topic for you itself, right? And you just have to make little changes to the topic. So so Copilot Studio is quite powerful at helping you to build these topics quickly. Now you might ask me, why do I have to build a topic? Now every conversational application that you would be thinking of building. So for example, if you are building an application that is helping the end user to find out certain drugs, which are relevant to certain conditions, right? Then you know that those are the kind of topics people are going to come to you with. It's always better to define a couple of topics that you know the bot or the Copilot is for. It's always important to kind of design those topics, and those topics could be designed like I said. It's all about mixing and matching and dragging some of the actions. And also dragging things like Power Automate workflow, generative answers together to go back to the user. But topic basically is anything that your bot is specifically for. There could be 2 or 3 relevant topics that you need to design for your Copilot. Previously, before generative AI, it used to be lots of topics that would have to be designed for a chatbot. But now that's not the case because generative AI handles lots of this in the backend on its own. Previously, if you have to write a chatbot that scrapes the entire site and give information like I just said, generative AI point to a website, it would take months, right, for us to write something like that because you don't know what user is going to ask. But today, it's not that difficult. It's very easy. You just point to a site and it kind of does all the magic on its own. Having said that, somebody who has designed conversational applications would know it is always good to design some topics which are relevant to your conversational application. So for the day on a weekend, I would say if you need a conversational application as part of your requirement, then definitely come up with 2 or 3 relevant topics that definitely need to be designed. We have spoken about generative builders. I'm going to skip that. Actions and plugins, that's the next one. And I think I've explained actions and plugins. It's more about workflows. It's more about APIs. It's more about the existing plugins that you can connect into. And this is how it typically looks like when you're trying to add a plugin. It will give you heap of examples of what you can use basically as an action. It's quite self-intuitive. So on the day you would be able to pick this up based on your requirement basically. Plugins can be, as I said, connectors. They can be your answer nodes as well. They could be, like I said, they could be Power Automate flows as well. I'm going to skip that because I thought I would take you through that, but maybe it's we don't have enough time to do that. And the next step would be once you have built your chatbot using generative AI, using by topic generation, and then creating actions and plugins to act for your end user, you would publish your bot. And publishing can be done to various channels. As I've said, you could publish to web, you could publish to Teams. There are multiple different options that are available for publishing. We don't have to go through the next 2 points because for the weekend, I don't think we will need to monitor any of these services. But these 2 aspects of the workflow are really important if you're writing enterprise type of application, because in conversational application space, it's really important to look at how your conversational chatbot or Copilot is answering the user. It's evergreen process of making sure you're evolving your Copilot, because it's not like a typical traditional web application where you exactly know what user is going to do, what button they're going to click. With conversational application, it's very, very important to do monitoring, analytics, and understanding whether end users are happy, they are getting what they want from your chatbot. But we are going to skip that part because maybe for the weekend it's not that relevant. But if you're building enterprise applications, it's very, 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 very relevant. And of course, you can do that with Copilot Studio. So now what I would do is again, there's a Copilot Studio architecture, which I think I have explained slightly, which is you build topics, you have actions, And together that kind of becomes core of your Copilot that you build through Copilot Studio. But you can also use something called as language understanding. Again, for the day, I think it will be too much for the weekend. So you can, once this is shared with you, you can skip this aspect, but these are the channels to which you can publish. And when you create your actions, you can integrate with AI Builder, you can integrate with data connectors, you can integrate with loads of different Azure services. So this is like the architecture, and lots of parts of this you can still use. I think it's quite important for all of us to kind of ground ourselves into the responsible AI principles on the day when you're, or the weekend, sorry, when you're building your application or even design thinking your requirements. It's quite important to understand that AI specific applications need to be ethical. They need to follow responsible AI principles. And we as Microsoft are quite we have like entire team, multiple teams across the globe who specifically just concentrate on responsible AI, and all our services have inbuilt responsible AI built into it, services built into it. But still, I would say that the use case that you would look at, what type of questions you want to ask user, what type of information you want to take from the end users or for whom you're building it. You have to think it from the responsible AI and ethics point of view as well. So just kind of being mindful of that. I wanted to mention it. The other point I want to mention here, which you would also see in the document that is passed to you, that Sandra and Martin has put in place, is you have to be very careful about what you use on the day when you have access to these tools, basically. So I think this is a good point to kind of just quickly mention that on the day, over the weekend, you would get access to Copilot Studio and you would get access to Azure subscription. Now, when I say you would get access to it, there are certain steps that you have to follow to get the Azure subscription, as well as Copilot Studio subscription as well. Every team would have one Copilot Studio account and one Azure subscription. The details about how you access what you do would come to you as part of the document, but it will be per team basically. And yeah, you have to just follow the instructions to set it up. Some of you might face issues, so do reach out to Sandra, Martin, and the rest of the team. I'm sure there must be an email address to which you have to reach out or chat with. They would help you with the issues and would reach out to us, people who are supporting basically or mentoring on this, if there are any specific issues. Now, what I want to do is, as before we get onto my my environment, and I show you Copilot Studio, what I want to do is I want you to quickly take a glance of what Copilot Studio looks like. So that's so the use case here is a question is asked to an existing Copilot, and it's not been able to answer that question because, like I said previously in one of the examples, it's not specifically topic built for that. So the answer that it will give back to the end user is, I don't know, I don't have answers. Then what you could do is you can extend using Copilot Studio. Now here in this case, it is extension, but this is exactly how you would build your Copilot from scratch as well. And that's why I've pulled this video, because these are the exact steps you follow for building a Copilot as well. The only thing is what you would do in before is you would start a new Copilot, basically. That's it. But here, a trigger is Copilot extension. Your trigger would be phrases, or your trigger would be something else, a question from a user, right? You would hear what this person is doing is it's going into SAP, pulling information from SAP table, because the question was about repair orders, right? So that lies into SAP for this organization. Then he or she is creating a new variable, And then using a formula, again, this is Power FX, something that some of you must have used in Excel or Power BI quite a lot. It's a very easy writing language, formula writing language that Power Platform uses and Copilot Studio uses as well. And then it added action, right? And what it did was in that action, it is going to give some, it's going to give some prompt engineering. So that's the prompt. He did the prompt engineering, he or she, and then saved the Copilot. And now this person is going to publish it, go back to the chatbot, ask questions, ask the same question actually that it couldn't answer before. And this time it could answer with the extension that was done, because it could now go to the SAP table and pull back the information. Now, if you look at the output that it has thrown, right, something important for your presentation or outcome of your conversational application is, if you look at what it has thrown, sorry, it just vanished. But if you remember what the output looked like, it wasn't textual. It was nicely formatted, and that is done using adaptive cards. There's a functionality called as adaptive cards into Copilot Studio. That's one way of responding back to the questions, or one way of responding back after the action is taken. When you start using Copilot Studio, you would see something called as answer with adaptive cards, right? Adaptive cards is nothing but a mini form. Think about it like a mini form. You can put images in there, you can put videos in there, you can format your response nicely. So now the Copilots are no longer just textual, plain answers. The answers could be very nicely formatted as well. You can also put a button in there if you want a response from the user on something, right? So very much, action driven, or the responses could look beautiful is what I'm trying to say. Now, this is one of the last videos that I want you to see, because again, it's quite powerful. What it does here is, I'm not sure if it is started. Yeah. So what it does here is, there's a Power App here. Let's say if some of you build a Power App which has list of people who need some help with something, let's say. And then what Copilot here is doing is basically, it is just looking at this data set and answering questions of, for example, in this case, where the deliveries are supposed to be made. So no OLAP is done, no ETL is done, nothing is done basically. And it can actually still look at the table as is in the transactional format and can roll up information and answer. Now this shows how this Copilot was built basically. So in this Power App, create a custom Copilot. That's what was clicked, and edit in Copilot Studio. So now you would see how the Copilot Studio interface looks like. This is the interface. That's how it looks like. The person went into the topic. He or she's creating a topic from blank, and now they would create or design the topic, basically get delivery estimations, right? And the phrases are given. The trigger phrases are given. These could be multiple trigger phrases, whatever user can ask. You don't have to have exact match, but just give like 4 or 5 trigger phrases, because it uses these trigger phrases to come to this topic if user is asking a question similar to it. Pulling user response, creating a variable to store that tracking number that user is going to give, then sending a message. Using that tracking number that was stored in the variable. Saving the topic. And then in settings, I mean, this was a very minuscule example actually, but you can do far more than this. You can extend this, add multiple actions, and it was integrated here with the Power App. So if on the day, if any one of you are basically trying to build a conversational AI, then you can definitely use Copilot Studio to integrate with either a Power App or any of the other services that you're using within the AI ecosystem, Azure AI ecosystem that you just saw in the beginning. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop presenting now. and take you to my environment where I have my Copilot. Let me share my screen. This window. Hopefully it is visible to everyone. I actually can't because my screen is shared. If somebody can come off mute and tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes, Deepa, we can see it. Yes.
Good. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks, Sandra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly take you through what you would see on the day, right? So each one of you would get a login, a username and a password in a secure fashion. What you would have to do is you would have to go to a link that will be given to you, and in a cognitive, you have to launch in a private mode your browser and use that login, username and password to log into the Power Virtual Agent or Copilot Studio link. Basically, it's a SaaS platform. The link would be given to you. Once you log into it, what you would see is you would see something like this. I mean, actually, you would not see this. What you would see is basically it will ask you some sort of, terms and agreements to use Copilot Studio and whether you want to use it or not. Once you say yes, and once you set the region, it will ask you to select the region. Once you do that, this is what you would see, but you would not see any Copilots in here because you wouldn't have created any, right? So you wouldn't have, this would be blank. Like me, I can see, this is one of my demo sites and I can see loads of Copilots here because I built them over a period of time, but you wouldn't see anything. What you would have to do is you would have to click on New Copilot and you would have to give it a name. You would have to select the language that you want the Copilot to speak in. You can add more languages afterwards. It's multilingual, but in the beginning, you have to select one language. And then you can select the icon that you want. And once you have done that, just say create. OK, that's it. I'm not going to create one here now because I'm going to take you back to my Copilot that I have already created. And once you do that, and once you hit submit, you would see something like this. You would see your Copilot that is already created for you. It will say, hello, I am whatever name you have given to your Copilot. That's what you would see. Now I want to quickly explain some of these links on the or menu on the left hand side. So topics will give you this. What it will do is it will list the topics. Now, lesson topics are nothing but topics that are there for you to learn more from how the topics could be built. These all topics, goodbye, greetings, start over, thank you. These all are like topics that are used by Copilot Studio. But again, these are topics that you can update, like goodbye topic is a topic that answers or says goodbye to the end user. You can customize this for yourself, right? Likewise, the greeting one can be customized. Greeting one is this one. Again, start over, thank you. All these topics can be customized. Now you can see some topics in here. These are created by me specifically, and I'm going to show you one of those actually. But where you see this gray icon, right? What I have done is you can create a topic and then mark its status as disabled. OK, so you can always do that. So if you want to disable some of the topics, you can do that. Topics are of two types. One, which are user generated, that is the one that you would create, and these would get added here. And then there are other which are system topics, and generally stay away from system topics or changing them, at least for the weekend. Don't make any changes to these topics. Don't modify them basically, but you can do more modification and create more topics in here. Now, how do you create a topic? You can basically click on create topic here, like I did for this one. So request for details. I think it's this one. Yeah. Request for the details of drugs developed by AstraZeneca, and you can create topic that you want to create basically. So you can either create from blank, which means you would get like a plain canvas, but you can also create it from a description. And I'll show you example quickly at the end if we have time. How do you create from description basically? So I'll click on this just in case we don't have time. You would have to just name the topic and just write what you want to do. So for example, good, I clicked on this because there are some examples in here. Let the user check the status of the flight, accepting the flight number and date. For each question, add 2 message variations and a speech alternative. If you put this in here, it will just build the entire topic for you. This is one example, but there are some other examples at the bottom here. You can try them out yourselves. So you can use natural language to build your own topics as well. I'll take you through the one that I have created, but what I'll do is I'll quickly explain some of the other tabs. Now actions is, as I said, you can create actions on your own, which means if you want an action to get some information from, let's say, Excel, so you can do that. You can also pull information from your APIs if you get one added in here. So you can create new action and get it added in here. But you can send an email, or you can run a script from SharePoint library that you have stored in your SharePoint library, or you can actually run a Power Automate. Sorry for that. Or you can actually run a Power Automate flow as well. So you can take multiple actions. It's very intuitive. Choose the action that you want to create, click next, next, next. It will ask you some details, give those details to it, and it will create your action basically, which means you will have list of actions in here, which can be used within your topic generation, but also these could be used for dynamic chaining. If you want to point, I'm going to skip some of this because it's not needed for today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you generative AI piece. So when you click on settings, you will see Copilot details, right? Which means you can add name of your Copilot, update the icon, and do some few advanced things as well with your Copilot, which is, if you want to log activities, log some node actions, you want to extend it further as well by integrating with some of the third-party log tools, you can do that as well. But again, for weekend, you might not need to do that. Generative AI is what I think most of you would be more interested in. So if you look at this, right, what I've done is in generative AI, I have given it 4 websites. One that is pointing, and all these 4 are public website. Again, nothing stops you from pointing to SharePoint sites, which you might have access to. The steps to configure SharePoint is again going to be in the documentation that you're going to get for Copilot Studio. Because it's a long process, I don't want to take all time kind of showing you how to just do some of the backend wiring basically. But I've given these 4 sides to it. What does it mean? It means that it will use these data sources to get information on the questions that the user is gonna ask. On what type of questions, right? It will do that for the type of questions that you haven't designed topic for. And those questions are called as unknown intent. If a known intent comes from the user, which means it maps to the topic that you have already created, then it will go to the topic that you have already created, and that's where the answer or actions will be taken for the user. But let's say if user asks something for which there's no topic match, there's no topic at all, then what Copilot Studio does is it uses something called as conversational boosting, which means it uses LLM or generative AI in the backend to get data from any of these sites that you have given it, either these sites or SharePoint site, or you have uploaded a document that you want answers on. It will basically use all these data sources that you have provided it to get the answer. Again, you can point to AI search, cognitive search index, as well as you can point to fine-tune LLMs as well. But you don't have access to LLMs, or you would not be able to fine-tune an LLM over a weekend, right? So I think that piece is being kept out. What you can do is you can use the LLM functionality that is inbuilt into Copilot Studio for the weekend. If there is any fine-tuning need, then that could be seen afterwards, basically. But over the weekend, probably you would not be able to fine-tune a LLM model. But like I said, you can point to these websites, point to SharePoint sites. You can upload a document in here. Of course, document needs to be less than 3 MB. You can point to an index, cognitive search index as well. And all that could be, it does RAG on top of everything and then gives answers back to the unknown intent type of questions that have come from the end user. Now, let me quickly show you what I mean by this, right? Now, let me show you a system topic, right? There's a system topic called as conversational boosting, right? Conversational boosting, this topic will be hit when the co-pilot doesn't find any topic match, right? And what it would do is it would basically use the LLM functionality in the backend, that is grounding. So look what it is doing. It is basically looking at the data sources that you have given to this copilot, which is the 4 websites that I told you, or I talked about in the beginning when I was showing generative AI piece. It will do kind of get answers from these 4 sources and then give back the answers to you. So that's what it does in the nutshell. Let us quickly, very, very quickly, look at the topic that I want you to see, this one, okay? Now, what this topic is doing is, let me run this first, actually. Let me turn on the tracking. If you want to see how Copilot is answering the questions, you have to turn on the tracking, yeah? And let me ask a question again. I did this some time ago, so I'm not sure if it's going to work. Yeah, so it's gonna come up with information from, this has come back from the from one of the sites that we gave it, actually, and then it's asking me, because what I've done is once the answer comes back, what it is saying is ask which drug the user wants information about. So let's say, I don't know, there are some drugs that AstraZeneca has developed. Let's say this is one of them. What it will do is it will basically go to the generative answers piece in here in the topic that I have designed and get back the answer from various sources again. So this is going to the Go Drug Bank and getting answers from the Go Drug Bank. So what I've done is I've done nothing here, but I have added actions. I have added generative answers in here. Like this piece at the top is a generative answer. I have given it the websites. And this piece here is a question. You can add a question as well. Ask a question, right? It's quite intuitive, actually. Ask the questions. And once the question is asked and you get the response back, pass it on to another generative answers node. And in this generative answer, you can again pass some more websites. I have passed to Go Drug Bank here. So every generative answer node or answers node, you can give its own data sources as well. Nothing stops you from that. And then whatever answer comes back from the Go Drug Bank, display it in here. That's the message that you're seeing here. It's a very simple topic, but you are just adding actions and adding generative answers basically in here to answer user questions basically. Again, for the generative node, one of the things I wanted you to see is you can actually do prompt engineering. So you can do some custom instructions to this. Like I've said here, you're a chatbot that answers questions about AstraZeneca drugs. Be polite, be kind, don't do this, don't do that, don't use foul language. So again, you have all sorts of options to do prompt engineering as well. So that's in the nutshell, very quick overview of Copilot Studio. And like I said, you would get more details in the documentation that the folks from the mentor team would share, that will have more information about how you build Copilot Studios and also how do you kind of use some of the Azure services as well.
Perfect. Thank you for your presentation, Deepa. Super informative, and it's exciting to see that we will be able to leverage these latest GenAI tools from Microsoft for creating the solutions. I've been answering some of the questions in the chat. There were plenty of them, and I see there is some people a bit overwhelmed by all the services.
I know it's quite overwhelming. I know. Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot, but Deepa herself will be there on Saturday, available for booking time slots with her and also answering questions offline. And as I said, there are other 2 experts in Microsoft that will join over the whole weekend in person and also will take questions online. And yes, as
Sandra,
Deepa
I just need to
said,
jump on another call if
yes,
that's okay.
I know.
And whatever questions
So
you have got,
thank you
just
so
pass
much,
on to me.
Deepa.
Yeah,
I
cool.
will
Thank you
stay
so
in the
much.
call and I will share the questions with you afterwards.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. So yes, for the participants, as I just shared in the chat, please feel free to send any questions here in the hackathon platform or directly by email. I will share all of them with Deepa and she will take it offline after this webinar. We will share this documentation with some learning resources for you to take a look. There are plenty of learning resources in the Microsoft platform, publicly available. And yeah, that's basically it. Also to remind you that we have more sessions this weekend coming up this week. So feel free to check out the calendar. All the information is in the platform and in the website, and you should also have all the invites in your email. And also important to remind that you should join a team as soon as possible, as the deadline is tomorrow afternoon. So please go to the hackathon platform and try to join a team. And with this, I will close the call. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you all this weekend. Thank you.